Okay, this is the third and last talk in this series. This talk is concerning the Alexandria Review. And the question is, can the Alexandria Review fulfill the needs of what I've called ingenuity? I first started with the needs of academia, but then I've changed because I think it's got a much broader context. And we're talking about peer review here. And some people call it the crisis in peer review, but peer review at the present time is under a tremendous amount of discussion. Put it politely. What happens is there's a need for communication within any community. So we have, for example, the scientific community, and it needs to communicate. People within the scientists all need to talk to each other. And communication is used to entertain and to educate. People can work together when we have communication. Institutions can empower and encourage by being able to communicate with people within the community. Communities can develop, individuals can become empowered and engaged. And communication itself needs to have integrity. If the communication has no reliability, it's going to create huge problems. And integrity is very, very difficult to somehow define. There is no authority for truth. So how do we know whether something's true or not? And quite often, we take a look at the data. So within data, there can possibly be cherry picking, false evidence, false emphasis rather, irrelevance. You're going to have a number of straw man manipulations in an argument. And within communities, okay, so within these things, it begins to create huge problems in trying to understand what is reliable and what's not reliable as communicating. So within a community, we have between individuals, we have a lot of interests that may be outside a community. So we may have a community, let's say people who look at atomic structure, we have atomic scientists. Outside of that particular community, there may be a very large number of people who are interested in what they happen to be doing. And then along comes something like the internet, and all of a sudden it explodes as far as the interest and everyone who wants to get involved in something like atomic physics. There's a huge volume increase in papers, ideas, and so forth, which is happening. And this now requires a filter for the volume of information, just so that the people within the community don't have to read absolutely everything and has to cut down. They just don't have the time to be able to keep up. So there's a tremendous necessity for the vetting of information. Presently, there are a lot of problems. It's open to abuse, the present system. The system is failing. I don't think there's any shadow of doubt about that. There is a lack of integrity. Many dedicated people within the community are being abused. It's a very unfair system, and it's becoming more and more parochial. In spite of all that, it's a great idea as far as having an idea to be able to vet things. The idea can also be extended throughout any community. So I'm going off on a sidebar here that the idea can be extended throughout any community, not just one particular community, such as a scientific community or even academic community. For example, can we take a look at journalism? Can the news media itself undergo peer review? Can we have a system of peer review for the news? Can we have a system of peer review for social media? What we can look at and not look at. With social media, of course, professional organizations already have peer review, and the internet also coming in line. Another thing to add into the mix is that the internet makes online journals and access incredibly simple and incredibly easy. So the idea of publishing is now pretty well in the hands of almost everyone. Problems arise in the need for an oracle. If we're looking for reliability and integrity, we have to have, or there is a need for something which we'll call an oracle that all agree to is some sort of vetting mechanism. Peer review answers that problem. These are the people who are all equal within a particular community. There's a desperate need, or a solid need for decentralization, because the more decentralized things are, the harder they are to corrupt. And also with peer review, the gatekeepers are individuals that are within the community. Vetting, it needs to be noted that vetting is not validation. Just because it's been peer reviewed doesn't mean it's true or accurate even. It just means basically that it's worth reading. So if let's say I'm studying atomic physics, I see something, come across something which may be totally and completely wrong, but it's humorous, and I say, this is worth reading because it's got some good ideas in it, and so forth. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the gospel. Vetting is used as a filter, okay, to try and cut down the thousands upon thousands of pieces of information, paper, and so forth, that are out there on just, being produced per day practically. Okay, so for peer review, the requirements are that reviewers should be paid. Their identities should be kept confidential. Authors and submissions should be kept confidential during the review process, so it's a blind process to make it fair. And there's a contradiction with these requirements. The contradiction is the reviewers and editors actually get accolades and benefits from being part of a journal. The author affiliation and publication history are also used as a filter as well. If someone's already published a whole mess of papers and comes from, let's say, an established institution or university, they're going to get published, okay? It's just because there's just so much work that needs to be done to vet this stuff. Well, that guy's already in, so he's pretty well going to be accepted. He's going to be published. And as a result, newcomers are now outsiders. It's harder and harder and harder for newcomers to be heard. So all these new ideas don't seem to go in, and we get into an established pattern. If we go outside that established pattern, it's automatically rejected. And we do need to vet, but at the same time, we have this problem with having a lack of new ideas. Solution, which I'm proposing, is we pay the reviewers. Replace the editors, get rid of all the editors, replace the editors with a subroutine. Libraries can publish themselves. There's no need to have publishing houses. The libraries of some academic institution and these universities are perfectly capable of publishing their own journals. We can handle transactions with smart contracts. We can time lock, and conditions is how we design the smart contracts. We can use tokens and coins, which we keep in escrow. And of course, I'm thinking of using Maxcoin right now because it's available, it can be used, and it's very, very stable. It would be perfect for this. Libraries themselves can mine the coins, and encryption keys are kept within the library and under the control of the library, which has control of each journal, but you have a large number of libraries that are happening in an overall database. So the solution looks like this. This is the way peer review is being done. The author makes a discovery, writes a paper about it, sends it off to a journal. The journal tosses it into an editor. An editor then will file it off to a reviewer. Reviewer goes through it. They want corrections and so forth that are going back and forth to the author. When the editor gives it finally the thumbs up, the author pays a fee for a publication fee to the journal. The journal fires it off through a subscription to a library, and the library pays a subscription fee to the journal. So the journal is making money from the author, and the journal is making money from basically academic libraries that pay for subscriptions for these journals. The reviewer, who basically is doing all the work, is not getting paid. The editor may or may not be paid, but they get a lot of prestige for being the editor of this particular journal. So this is the situation that we're in now. So what I'm proposing, what we're using for the Alexandria Review, is that the author makes a discovery, writes a paper, and sends it directly to a library, which will be handling the journal itself, its own journal. There is a lock on a payment that the author is paying, but the author is paying not for publication. The author is actually paying for a review. So the library sends it off to their own reviewers that they have. Either it could be in-house reviewers, or there could be external reviewers, which they have. Again, there's a smart contract between the library and all these reviewers. Reviewers pick it up, they do the review, and through the library goes back and forth with encryptions and so forth for corrections, which we call nits. The reviewer put in a whole mess of nits as nitpickers, and the author has to remove all the nits, and the reviewer, or a certain number of reviewers, according to the smart contract, will give an LGTM. Looks good to me is what the LGTM is. So it needs a certain number of LGTMs, let's say, gives it a thumbs up, library says okay and accepts it, throws it into its online journal, and we're done. At that point, the keys are removed and the money passes to the reviewers. Reviewers end up getting paid, the library gets copyright, and basically most libraries want to share that information anyway, so the idea for a paywall may or may not be necessary as far as the library is concerned. It gets the prestige of having that particular paper being published. Now, the work to be done in this particular project is basically trying to get a hold of academics who may be interested in this, libraries, university libraries in particular, code cutters. We're going to need people to cut code, to be able to design the software. Encryption algorithm needs to be put in. Smart contracts need to be designed, which we're designing right now, as a matter of fact, putting this in. Blockchain, we can just use Maxcoin blockchain because it's there and we already know it works. We already have a GitHub repository that has been set up. We're thinking of using BitTorrent. We'll just use encrypted documents on BitTorrent, and that way we can toss them back and forth. Planning and marketing, so we can establish this into the environment, either the academic environment or whichever environment we wish to go into. Web pages need to be made, so we need to make web pages. We're designing them right now as we're going along. And feedback. We need feedback from the academic community. We need feedback from libraries. Is this a good idea? How can we improve it or not improve it, and so forth, to get the people involved. Now, a use case came up just recently, just before I put this together. This use case was taking a look at white papers in the crypto space. If we look at the crypto space right now, we see we're developing something brand new that's coming in. And if we're going into journals, we could create a war and have a big fight, in academia and trying to establish this, but in the crypto world, nobody's handling this. So we have lots and lots of white papers being tossed around. It's wide open to have some critique and peer review or some vetting of all these white papers to see which ones are worth reading and which ones are not. So it's all a part of the project development. There are many conflicting ideas, and how can this actually be, in a way, sorted out? So it's a way for the crypto community to show some maturity and lead the way in verification by using the blockchain to decentralize it and creating some sense of integrity within the crypto space. So we want to know what is worth reading according to the crypto community itself. That would be quite valuable. So we have white papers in the crypto space, and we have to beat a path from chaos into some sort of order without sacrificing ingenuity for the sake of, let's say, some future status quo. There's a precedent for this situation when we talk about moving from, example, the Renaissance into the Enlightenment, and it evolved, and the whole review process evolved using that. Pamphlets became journals. It's a way of communicating. The peer review started to become important, and then peer review itself started to take a huge precedence over what was actually being communicated. So we can start quite easily with smart contracts with some sort of crypto journal. It's very easy to make. We can make a crypto journal, okay? We can make smart contracts sitting on a web page. We can take these white papers, people submit them to, let's say, this crypto journal. We create a site to upload them. We have a smart contract with the author. The author is a small amount of money or whichever through a coin, such as Maxcoin. We encrypt it on BitTorrent keys. We communicate through an editor subroutine. The editor just becomes a subroutine, which communicates with reviewers and so forth. And then once this has been vetted and so forth and gone through, the white paper is then added with the reviews to this journal, and out it goes so that people can get access to it. So I'm open to questions. It's who we are, www.alexandriareview.org. If you wish to take a look at it, comment, sign up, whichever. I do have a GitHub, which is Alexandria Review under BB Route, and that's the email. If you wish to start sending in emails and so forth, I will respond to them, admin@alexandriareview.org. Okay, thank you very much. That's what Alexandria Review is about in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.